Am I the asshole for laughing when my friend said my boyfriend and I are doing a roleplay? Last night my boyfriend and I were invited with a couple of friends to a seafood boil restaurant. I'm a bit picky when it comes to food, and one of the things I hate is seafood. But my boyfriend is the total opposite of me. He doesn't have a problem with any food. I am 21 and he's 24. So we went. He ate the boil with a couple of his friends since it was a larger portion, and I got a separate meal. He knows about my eating habits and he always tries to get me to eat new food. It's just something that he does. Halfway through he offered me a small piece of the lobster, which I've never had before, with his hand. It took a bit of convincing, but I did eat it, and he was watching me for my reaction. Then he kissed my temple. Throughout he was the one cracking the legs for me. He kept giving me pieces. Near the end, before we left, I went to wash my hands and my friend came with me. When we reached, she told me that I should really try to keep the role-playing with him more private. I laughed out loud because I thought she was joking, but I see she wasn't, so I was like, what? And she told me that it's fine if we have a dynamic, it's just not appropriate at the dinner table. I told her to not be ridiculous, and it's genuinely nothing like that. She got a bit mad and said how she saw what he did and how he looked at me, and that it's quite obvious. I told her that that's actually insane and it was totally innocent, and that she's wrong. Things were a bit weird between us after that, and my boyfriend and I left shortly after. Did he just hand you the pieces and you ate them, or was he feeding you by hand? Because if it's the former, not the asshole, but if he was feeding you by hand in a restaurant, yeah, that's poor etiquette. Sounds like it came across as DDLG type stuff. You might not intend for it to come across that way, but I'd say no assholes here, because at the basic level, this is your friend trying to tell you that your behavior was inappropriate. We weren't there, so it's hard to judge, but at minimum you should consider what she said. You're not an asshole for laughing, but you should still give it thought about whether your behavior was really appropriate for a public setting. The whole, "it took a bit of convincing but I did eat it" part suggests very strongly to me that you behave a lot more like a child than you probably realize. Not the asshole. I could see it if she complained about too much PDA or you're rudely shutting out the rest of the table to focus on your romance. I don't get that impression from your description, but her view of the situation could be another story. But roleplay sounds more like she's jealous, either of your relationship or because she has some interest in one of you. If she were the only other friend there, I'd think she might have felt like a third wheel, but sounds like there was at least one other person to interact with. Ask her why she's sexualizing you. Tell her you're not comfortable being around her if she keeps putting you in this kink box of hers. Problem solved. Heavily depends on how long he had to spend playing the "convincing my picky girlfriend to eat food" game for. Not the asshole. I'm very confused. Role-playing what? Being in love? Sharing bites off your plate with a loved one? Those are completely normal things. Am I the asshole for not inviting my nephew on vacation? For the last 20-ish years, I planned a family trip. I love to travel, and this is a way to include my siblings and their children, 10 ppl, in my passion and a fun way to spend time together. I cover the cost of the tour and transport to the destination, and they cover the tips, incidentals. So far, we've gone to Turkey, South Africa, Vietnam, Croatia, Panama, Mongolia and Iceland. It's typically about $4,000, $6,000 person, and requires months, years of planning and budgeting. I poll the family on their availabilities about 18-24 months prior to the planned trip. My nephew, late 20s, has RSVP'd yes for the last 4 trips, only to back out at the very last minute, the week prior, such that I can't recoup the cost of his fare, and the reasons he doesn't make it are never acceptable for a travel insurance claim. Work emergency, he's an accountant, friend's wedding, concert tickets, high school 10 years reunion. I'm currently planning a Galapagos cruise for October 2026 and decided not to extend the invite to my nephew because he's so unreliable. Now most members of my family are outraged and, though not actually boycotting the trip, incessantly vocal on their displeasure at my targeting my nephew. I've tried to compromise by requesting that he give me a deposit with the plan that I return it if he actually comes, but this only seemed to make people angrier. I mentioned canceling the entire thing, and now only my younger sister is speaking to me. She tells me that the family is in uproar about my selfishness and discussing writing me off permanently if I actually cancel the trip. I'm in tears and just don't know what to do. I love my family. Was it asshole move to exclude my nephew? Let me get this straight. You plan, book, and pay for an insanely huge family vaca every year. There's one person who always wastes your money. You don't want to waste money on them. And now your family is saying if you don't continue to pay for the insanely expensive vacations, they will disown you? Your family sucks. They're, at best, entitled. At worst, abusers who are using you for your money and ready to dump you the moment you aren't useful to them anymore. Not the asshole. Tell them you won't cancel the trip, but everyone can pay their own way. When they threaten to cut you off, say, niece, saves me the cash. Edit. Grammar. Edit 2. My first award. Thanks. Not the asshole. Your family has been using you. I would be so angry if a relative has consistently flaked, costing another family member $30,000 over the years without reimbursing them. You've probably spent over $500,000 on trips with your family and they're treating you this way? It's time to make new friends and travel partners. Your family doesn't care about you. They are only around for the fancy trips and your money. Otherwise they would have agreed to consequences for flaking. You would the a-hole if you go forward with the trip as planned. Cancel the trip for everyone except you and your younger sister. Stop being used. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. Your nephew has a clear pattern of behavior that is disrespectful and inconsiderate. If it were only 1 out of a half a dozen trips, but you indicate he has backed out every time. I assume you have communicated to the other family members that every time you include him he backs out the last minute and the $4,000 to $6,000 that you paid to include him goes to waste. I'm also assuming that he cannot be added at the last minute. Not the asshole. You have stated your past frustrations and seem as though you are flexible and would allow him to pay up front. Anyone that's outraged is more than welcome to pay your required deposit for him, and it's pretty telling that they won't. If they won't cover for him and are still mad about your position, then they can fuck off too. You've spent $16,000, $24,000 on tickets and beds that your nephew didn't use? And your family is angry that you don't want to keep throwing money away? You're not the asshole. The nephew is the A for never reimbursing you, and also for not saying to the rest of the family, I feel really bad that I cancelled on op last year, and the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that, so I said I would stay out of this year's trip. He's in his late 20s and he hasn't taken this responsibility? What a loser. Am I the asshole for telling my fiancé his cousin's girlfriend is not welcome in our new home? I, 26F, have been with my fiancé, M27, for 5 years. Early in our relationship, he and his cousin, Steve, M30, purchased a house together as co-owners. My fiancé's sister and their other cousin also lived there for a while. Everything was fine until 2 years later, when Steve started dating a woman who quietly moved into the house after only 4 months of dating. This upset everyone since it wasn't discussed with the household. She doesn't work, doesn't go to school, and doesn't contribute financially. She spends her days reorganizing the house while constantly on the phone with Steve. She's extremely controlling. She goes through his phone, sits in on all his calls, and ensures he is always with her or talking to her. He's never alone, even at work or in the car. At first, she seemed sweet, and the family liked her. But over time, she began subtly isolating Steve from everyone. She convinced him to have my fiancé's sister and their cousin move out, leaving just her, Steve, and my fiancé in the house. She made my fiancé feel unwelcome in his own home, and now she plans to have her brother move into Steve's house, after Steve removed his own family. Her passive-aggressive behavior is exhausting. She labels communal items like salt with her name so no one else can use them, reorganizes shared spaces filled with things that aren't hers, and ignores me completely when I come over. When Steve isn't home, she hides in her room and acts cold and dismissive. She is a completely different person when he is not around, and it's clear these are her true colors. Some family members have voiced concerns about her controlling behavior to Steve, but he insists he loves her and turns a blind eye. While she's the instigator, I don't think Steve is completely innocent. He's allowing this behavior. Recently, she convinced Steve to buy my fiancé out of the house, so we're moving out in a week. I'm relieved, but here's my issue. I told my fiancé I don't want her in our new home. I'm fine with Steve visiting, but I don't want her there. If she couldn't show us basic respect while living in a house my fiancé co-owned, I refuse to let her treat us poorly in our space now. I don't want to stir the pot or cause drama, but I also refuse to let my boundaries be disrespected or normalize the way she's treated us. My fiancé is torn because he wants to maintain his relationship with Steve, but I feel strongly about this boundary. Am I the asshole for saying I don't want Steve's girlfriend in our home? Too long did not read. My fiancé's cousin has a girlfriend that is controlling and rude to me, and I don't want her in my new house. Not the asshole. If fiancé cannot do this one thing for you, concerning what will be your home, safe space, get into premarital therapy ASAP. Why is his cousin and the girlfriend a priority over the person he wants to spend the rest of his life with? If it's the old bullshit, family, excuse, you got big problems in your future. Figure it out before you are in any deeper. Not the asshole. But over time, she began subtly isolating Steve from everyone. She made my fiancé feel unwelcome in his own home. She's extremely controlling. She goes through his phone, sits in on all his calls. She's a whole forest of red flags. I don't want to stir the pot or cause drama, but I also refuse to let my boundaries be disrespected or normalize the way she's treated us. Rightly. Hold it as a hard boundary. Your fiancé needs to fully have your back here. She'll probably stop Steve coming on his own, which is a shame because I think he needs all the friends he can get. That isn't on you though. No way should you have her in your space after the way she's behaved. All the best. Your feelings are valid, but it's your fiancé's home too. And it sounds like he's putting more in financially than you are. Plus you'll allow her to flip the script and paint you as the one who is controlling and isolating your partner. A better approach would be to allow fiancé to invite her over but agree up front on what behavior from her is and isn't acceptable and how you'll respond to unacceptable behavior. Then enjoy dropping the hammer. Nadine, when you are a guest in someone's home, it's common courtesy to greet your hostess. Nadine, as things here aren't to your liking, we can respect that and wouldn't dream of expecting you to stay. Here, let me walk you to the door. Having her in your home doesn't mean accepting mistreatment in your home. Not the asshole, but you have to know that refusing the girlfriend to visit is certainly going to stir the pot. Especially considering how possessive she is. And how will this play out if she remains in Steve's life? When you get together with them at other occasions, like at their house, there is bound to be tension. Not saying you shouldn't set boundaries, but it sounds like you can expect pushback from the girlfriend. I wouldn't say anything to anyone about banning someone until the sale is signed, sealed and delivered. But really you and your fiancé need to come up with a compromise. Perhaps don't invite them over for a few months and he can get together with Steve at Steve's house or at a bar or restaurant. In a few months you may not actually see Steve's girlfriend much. My heart aches for Steve. He's being abused intellectually, emotionally and financially, just based on this thread. Makes me worry about his physical condition. I know, this story is about not wanting Steve's fiancé in your home, and this is probably correct. But, for Steve's sake, please keep communicating with him. He may need a lifeline in the future. I am worried she may force him to marry her or she'll get pregnant. He will have even less options. I would make sure Steve has a burner phone at his workplace, in case he needs to get out of situation. This story scares me for him. Really sad. Am I the asshole for being mad that my family snuck meat in my food when I was a vegetarian? In high school, I was a vegetarian for a couple of years. I was really into it, not like vegan teacher crazy but more like I just enjoyed being in a community. I'm no longer a vegetarian as an adult though. I overheard my mother and grandma laughing and telling something to their friends. Turns out, the whole time I was vegetarian my whole family, even extended which is like 50 people, had a game where they would see how often they could sneak me meat. Cooking veggies in bacon grease and stuff like that. At birthday parties, family gatherings, Thanksgiving, and just dinner at home. It was like an inside joke game for years, and I'm kinda upset. I confronted them but they said they were only doing it for my own good, that I needed more protein, but they kept smiling and giggling to one another about it so it felt like more of a joke. I dunno, maybe it wasn't and they really did do it because they cared, but it still feels mean. They all say I'm being a drama queen for being upset. So I guess what do you think? Am I the asshole for being upset by this or should I just laugh with my family? Not the asshole. It's valid you're upset by this. At the same time, you can't retroactively do anything about it, unfortunately. So pick your battles. Although I would be wary of eating their food, considering the history of food tampering. Also, you may need to help your family understand nutrition. And just basic science. Bacon grease has zero protein in it. Because it's a fat, not a protein. It sounds like they think animal products equals protein and that plant products can't have protein, and that's just horribly inaccurate. ETA. To be clear, the comment about teaching their family about protein was sarcasm because they actually did this to humiliate her, not give her protein. Although Op could give them science, nutrition lessons as a tongue-in-cheek way to insult them. Not the asshole make some brownies and bring them over. Let everyone eat but you don't eat. When they ask, because I know what's in them, and do not elaborate further and just go home. That's plain disrespectful. As a vegetarian I am very conscious of what I'm eating, incorporating foods high in vitamins, minerals and protein. I get annual blood tests and I am very healthy. If people started sneaking meat into my food I would find it a violation of ethics and I wouldn't be able to trust them anymore. Maybe sneaking some laxatives under the guise of helping them clear their digestive systems would help them understand smirk. Edit. The laxatives comment was meant to be tongue-in-cheek open-mouth smile. I guess I'm naive to think anyone would take that seriously. Not the asshole. Not the asshole and I mean, no offense, but those members of your family are mean little sociopaths. What else have they been doing to you secretly over the years? If you developed a food allergy would they think you were faking it and try and poison you? Not the asshole it's about respect, which they didn't have for you. I would tell them that this really changes how you view them and your relationships with them. Hold them accountable. Whenever they say they're being truthful just point out that you can't really know that because they have a history of lying to you. You don't have to get mad. Just be upfront that you see them differently now and that's their fault. You don't have to cut them off or anything, but some healthy distance won't hurt. Not the asshole. It is wrong to tamper with other people's food. I don't see how putting things into your food without your knowledge is funny or is a joke.